from his family.
Was out on the field pretty much the whole entire first half.
We got a lot of great games. I'm highlighting 2 SEC games.
Let's go. What's up, everybody? Christian Ballard, sports journalist here at Ballard Sports Media, coming at you with Touchdowns Live with ya boy, Mayhem Matthew. What's up, buddy?
What's up, guys? How y'all doing today? We got a jam-packed, and I mean we got a jam-packed episode. We're going to talk about Grok ranking college football's 10 best teams in 2025. Following, we're going to be talking about former Penn State wide receiver and Ohio State wide receiver Julian Fleming, seriously injured in a deadly ATV accident, followed by ACC news. They distributed record $45 million per school in 2023-2024. And then also, we're going to talk what to expect at SEC spring meetings in Destin, Florida, starting tomorrow, where we're going to talk about, the waiting on the settlement, the NCAA versus House. We'll talk about a little bit more about the playoff expansion. I know we already touched on that. And then we will talk about SEC versus some teams that like Tennessee and others. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I mean, how's everybody doing? Everybody's doing good?
I think we're doing great, man. It's good to be here on Memorial Day. Thankful for all those who have served in our military and armed forces and just the sacrifices they've made so we can have the freedoms that we have to be able to do shows like this, Mayhem.
Yes, for sure. I want to say happy Memorial Day to all those. And also, would like to take a brief 5 to 10 second moment of silence for the ones who sacrificed their life to give us our freedoms. All right, Ballard, let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, shout out to the comments too. Motivated, dedicated says, hell yeah, fellas. What's up, buddy? Flaming Sports Media, what's going on, man? What's up, fellers? What's up, feller? And Motivated Dedicated says, salute to all veterans. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get into the show, Mayhem.
All right, for sure. Grok ranks college football 10 best teams in 2025. Now, I've only seen number 10, and so that's not going to be a surprise to me. But the rest of this list, I have not seen. So coming in at number 10, BYU. We've already talked about BYU on this channel quite a bit, especially with Jake Retzlaff and what he's got his nose in right now. We already talked about that. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But he's a dual threat quarterback and his ability. Grok said the dual threat ability and offensive continuity make a BYU a Big 12 contender, though defensive leadership losses require reloading. Transfers like Carson Ryan and favorable schedule support a playoff push. Now here's all right, I want to break this down. So that's what Grok said. So, I do agree with what Grok said. Jake Retzlaff is one of the better key pieces returning for this BYU team. They're going to have explosive offense once again. then I think they have a okay defense. Not like a great defense, but not like a uh, it's not like an elite defense, but it's not like a trash defense either. They have a middle of the road defense, but yeah, I mean when you look at the Big 12, Ballard, whenever you look at the Big 12, it was kind of wide open last season. Whenever I thought that Utah was the 100% favorite to come into the season, they had a very disappointing season. So I don't want to go ahead and say Utah again, even though I love Utah, and I think Utah is my favorite team in the Big 12. I don't know why. Something about Utah just makes me want to cheer for them. I love their head coach and stuff like that. But talking about BYU, BYU's one of the first three teams that you're going to name, Ballard, whenever we're talking about the Big 12 title contenders this upcoming season. So, of course, I do agree with what Grok said. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think BYU is one of the better Big 12 teams. I do like Retzlaff. I know we can kind of make fun a little bit and call him the BYU and everything, but he really is a good quarterback on the field. And uh, obviously, we talked about some stuff about him last week. That aside, when you look at him on the field, he plays smart and he's a really good leader for the offense. And I really do think BYU had last year, and I think and again this year have one of the more productive offenses in the Big 12. So I do like BYU at number 10 on this list. Now, should they be higher? We'll see the rest of the list soon. But Grok is off to a good start, I think.
Yeah, so this is what College Football HQ says about BYU. It says the most productive defense in the Big 12, both in scoring and total production, will look different, but can improve given the quality of its incoming transfer class. While Retzlaff returns alongside experienced offense, rotation includes receiver Chase Roberts. Just like I said, it's not an elite defense, but it's not like a trash defense. It's a pretty good defense. It says the
Yeah.
most productive defense in the Big 12. And whenever we look at the Big 12, I mean, come on, Ballard. Big
It's not
12
a
is
defensive league.
right.
It's
It's
not a
just not.
defensive league. Now,
So
I will say real quick, it has gotten better defensively, which I love. But if you had asked us about Big 12 defenses 5 years ago, when Texas and OU were still in there and it was before all the realignment, you would have said, but wait, the Big 12 has defense? Nowadays, you say, well, okay, BYU's out there, Utah's okay, Baylor's got some good defense, but that's it. I mean, you name a couple teams, whoever you want, really, and then you go about your business.
yeah, I mean, um, they. If you take a look at BYU's schedule this past season, they played Southern Illinois, they played Wyoming, they played, you know, they played uh, a terrible Baylor team that put up 28 points. One of the most surprising wins that they got was Kansas State. They only allowed 9 points in that game. So, yeah, they did have a pretty good defense, but they gave up 35 to Oklahoma State. They gave up 24 to UCF. They gave up 21 to Utah, a terrible Utah team, which, by the way, should have won that game. If y'all don't remember that, Utah should have
Utah?
definitely won that
Oh, yeah.
game. Gave up. They were solid. They were a solid defense in the Big 12 for sure, but they
Yeah.
didn't really face the competition. They faced Arizona. Uh, a disappointing Arizona team from the prior season. They took a step back. They went 4-8 Ballard. Remember, Arizona, I think, went like 9-3 or something like that in 2023. And then they lost their head coach, and they lost a lot of key players from the Arizona team. Went 4-8. They still have their quarterback, as far as I remember. But yeah, man. I mean, I think them being a title contender and getting that playoff push is correct. I think number 10. As far as this list, I mean, I know we only did one team so far, but we'll see if they're perfectly placed. Coming in at number 9, we have Alabama.
Ooh.
So whenever I say Alabama, before I read this, what's your immediate thoughts? Like, do you think they're too low on this list?
Well, no, I mean, I got to see the rest of the list. I will say that it is going to be a new quarterback at the helm of the offense, and most likely Ty Simpson. But you also got to remember for Alabama, it's Kalen DeBoer's show. It's not Nick Saban's show. And, had this been like a list from a few years ago and you saw him at number 9, you'd be like, that's crazy. That's too low. It's Alabama we're talking about. But this is a team that lost 4 games, counting a bowl loss to a pretty down bad Michigan team. So I have some questions for him this year. I like him to do better, but I need to see it first. So I think 9 is pretty respectful.
Well, let's see what Grok has to say about it. It says, Kalen DeBoer's second year brings a quarterback battle, likely Ty Simpson, and a talented roster with Ryan Williams shining. Defense stability and SEC pedigree keep them in the top tier despite 2024's 9-4 stumble. One of them losses were to a bowl game loss, which I felt like Alabama really didn't want to be there, and I felt like this Michigan team that they were playing did want to be there. That's what I really felt like. I felt like Alabama and Kalen DeBoer felt as if they should have been in the playoffs at 9-3, as so did South Carolina and Ole Miss. But I feel like they didn't really want to be there. Michigan went 6. I think they went 6-6. They made a bowl game. They wanted to be there. They wanted to get above 500, and they wanted to prove that Michigan was better than what their record actually said last year. So, like, I don't want to say that game didn't matter, because I hate whenever people say bowl games don't matter. I absolutely hate it. That game definitely did matter. That game absolutely mattered, because I can't say one bowl game didn't matter and then one bowl game did matter. I really do believe this bowl game mattered just as much as the rest of them. You got to get that win. You have to win if you're Alabama. That's a bad look, especially if you're Kalen DeBoer. You're the head coach. You got to get this team ready and motivated to play, even if it's in, a bowl game that has no stakes. So you got to go out. You got to go out with a win. I mean, I know, like, things can happen in the off season, and you don't want to coach your last game. I'm not saying that Kalen DeBoer's last game was versus Michigan, but crazy things happen all the time. You don't want to coach your last game, or and go out with an L, right? You want to. What I'm saying is, you want to play every single game like it's your last, right?
Right.
And you want to go out with a win. And, the seniors, that was their last game, the seniors that did play, and that, they went out with a loss, unfortunately. And that's just not the standard that I'm used to seeing at Alabama. So coming into this season, I do agree with what Grok said, pretty much everything that Grok said. Kalen DeBoer, he's going to have Ty Simpson. And so that's a unknown factor coming into the 2025 season. But we have Ryan Williams, and Ryan Williams is not 17 anymore. He's 18. Okay, so he's definitely going to improve, and he's going to be one of the best 2 wide receivers in the country. So as long as Ty Simpson can get the ball to him offensively, I think the offensive line has to improve. You know, the last couple years has been weird for Alabama's offensive line. Kind of been shaky a little bit, but I think that for sure that they can improve and get better. And y'all have a couple wide receivers, but notably what Ryan Williams. The defense, I mean, y'all always have a top tier defense year in and year out, and I don't think that's going to change this upcoming year as well. So I do agree with what Grok said.
Yeah, I do too. I think the the defense is going to be better. It's going to be solid. I like where it's going. I like Ryan Grubb coming back in at OC and leading the charge offensively, calling the plays and stuff. Ty Simpson, I mean, and no disrespect to Milrow, but I do think we take a big step forward at quarterback for Alabama, and I think that's going to be key. I think you have the receiving weapons. You bring in Isaiah Horton from Miami as a transfer. Jeremy Bernard comes back, and obviously Ryan Williams. The pieces are there. They just need that leadership. And I felt like, even though as much as I love Milrow, I felt like they lacked it at times. But I think if they could get that settled, they're a championship contender.
College Football HQ says, sure, he's working in the shadow of college football's most accomplished coach ever, but the heat is still on DeBoer. Do not turn out another 9-1 season. That front 7 defense should be the Tide strength while they solve the quarterback's puzzle and learn how to move the ball consistently. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
I do agree with both Grok and what College Football HQ says. I'm also going
What's
to
up,
stand
guys?
on. I'm also going to stand on what I say. You know, that offense can be really, really good. I do want to see the offensive line get better. I do want to see a breakout running back for Alabama. You know, whenever I think of on y'all's roster right now, I don't see a Derrick Henry. You know, I don't see um, Eddie Lacy. You know what I mean? I don't see
Yeah,
a guy that I'm really, if I'm on the opposing team and I'm the opposing team's defense, I'm not really looking at that backfield and saying, man, I'm scared, right?
right.
Um,
And that's not to say you can't see that later. And it's also not to diss on the running back room. There are talented guys. There are the guys, Justice Hayes went to Michigan. Okay, he's out the picture, whatever. Jam Miller comes back. You got Richard Young in there. Kind of a 1-2 punch. Maybe that's kind of your go-to there this year. I think it starts out with Miller, but overall, I think that you're going to have a good rotation of backs um, for Alabama. And I think it would start with those two. And ultimately, it might be a 50-50 battle for the running back position.
And I'm not dissing on the
Right.
running back. I'm not dissing on the running back position. I'm just saying that I'm just stating a fact. I mean, if Justice Haynes were to come back for Alabama, then we could be talking about Justice Haynes leading the pack for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Jam Miller showed flashes of goodness um, this past season, but it all starts with the offensive line. If I'm dissing on anybody on Alabama's team, it would be the offensive line, which I'm not even dissing on them. I'm just saying it's got to get better, right?
Yeah.
I do think that is going to make or break this offense, this Alabama offense, because we can't. A lot of games. Also, it starts with discipline too up front. I've seen too many times, false starts by the offensive line or, stupid penalties. against Alabama that would start them out with a first and instead of a 1st and 10, now you're first and 15, right? 1st and 20. Now you're behind the line of scrimmage, right? And then the opposing team's defense going to pin their ears and come after the quarterback. And then with having a new quarterback like Ty Simpson, that is a disaster if you get into that situation, right? So all I'm saying is they need to be better on the offensive line. And I think if the offensive line is really good, I think the running backs then could try to run through the holes and stuff like that. And y'all's running game needs to do a little bit better than what we see last year. Wide receiver is going to be fine. I think your quarterback, if he has enough time to read his reads and do what he does best, I think he'll be fine. Yeah, I mean, I like Alabama at 9 so far. Let's go to number 8, Oregon. Oregon's a little low on this list, don't you think?
Yeah, I was fixing to say, like, Gronk needs to get his stuff together, man. I got to see what he says, though. After a 13-0 2024, Dante Moore takes over at quarterback with transfers like Makai Hughes boosting the offense. A tougher Big Ten schedule tests Dan Lanning's physical squad. I could agree to that, but there's like, come on, man. If you don't have Oregon in your top 5, I think you're mistaken, aren't you?
I mean, yeah.
Probably even your top 3.
I mean, even if you lose your quarterback, you have Dante Moore, which I don't know if
Right.
anybody really remembers who Dante Moore is, but he was UCLA's starting quarterback just a couple years ago. He
Yeah, he was a
transferred.
stud.
He transferred to Oregon to sit under Dylan Gabriel, sit under Dan Lanning's offense, and which a lot of quarterbacks would not even think about doing nowadays, right? So
Mhm.
Dante Moore already has the discipline and what it takes. He's already a really highly talented quarterback, but he is trusting the process, and he's going to be in the NFL, sooner rather than later. Dan Lanning trusts Dante Moore. Dante Moore trusted Dan Lanning in this offense, and um, I think even with Dante Moore being a new quarterback at the helm, Oregon's still going to be Oregon. They're, unlike, and I'm not dissing on Alabama, but unlike Alabama, Oregon has a extremely good offensive line, extremely elite wide receivers, extremely great defensive line, extremely, elite defense. They got an elite
Man,
team.
they're loaded at every single position, and they were the best team last year that didn't win the Natty, in my opinion.
I mean, yes, they do got a
And
tougher.
I think that I think going into this year, despite losing Gabriel, but you bring in Dante Moore, and that's practically it, right? So, I mean, they got to be the favorite this year, or one of them, at least one or two.
I mean,
And if
yeah.
they don't win it, I think that's just, if they don't even make a national title, like something's wrong in Eugene.
Well, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but the playoff, the way that they changed the playoff to a straight seeding, right?
Right.
If they did repeat what they did this past season, which I don't think they're going to do that because they do have a tougher Big Ten schedule. But, if they do get a number 1 seed, then they'll have an easier path than what they did this past season. They had one of the toughest paths to get to the championship game. So with this straight seeding, they would have a little bit easier of a path to make it to the national championship game. So, I mean, this year is the year for teams like, and I'm sure we'll talk about them later because I'm sure they're on this list. I don't know what number they are, but I'm sure they are. Texas, right? For
Yeah.
teams like Texas and Oregon, to me, this year it has to be their year. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. This is what College Football HQ says. Dylan Gabriel is out of the picture at quarterback, but Dante Moore brings 5-star pedigree at the position. He should work behind a very solid offensive line after signing 2 key blockers in the portal, including left tackle Isaiah World, to man the blind side. So, I mean, Grok and College Football HQ didn't say what I said. I said that every single position is loaded. I mean, they mentioned the offensive line and quarterback, and they mentioned the Big Ten schedule being a little bit tougher. But I'm saying Oregon is going to be just as good as they were last year. Yeah, they might lose a game because it's very hard to go undefeated back-to-back seasons, right? But
Right.
that still doesn't, mean that they're not going to be good or anything. They're going to be elite. Oregon is going to be an elite team once again, and that's just, I mean, we've seen Dan Lanning make changes at the quarterback position because his quarterbacks go to the NFL. He's already had 2 of them. Bo Nix, he went to the NFL, right? He went to the Broncos, and people were like, "Well, Oregon's gonna fall off." And then what did they do? They got Dylan Gabriel, and then Dylan Gabriel took them to a 13-0 season, and then now they have Dante Moore after Dylan Gabriel went into the NFL draft, right? So
Right.
Dan, this is not anything. This is not anything new for Dan Lanning at Oregon. He's already had a couple of quarterbacks make it to the NFL. He's had to make decisions on quarterbacks, and he's been very successful with them. So I 100% believe that Oregon being number 8 is a little low.
I agree. I would put them somewhere in the top 5, but I don't. I mean, I think you said earlier. I mean, they could possibly even be 1 or 2. Or maybe I said that. Some one of us said that, but I mean, I would agree to that statement. Um, that being said, yeah, Oregon at 8. That's shocking. Gronk needs to get it together. How about Notre Dame at number 7? Now Notre Dame above Oregon.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, no.
I would actually put. I don't know who's left on this list, but I would actually put Notre Dame at number 8 as of currently right now.
Gronk said CJ Carr steps in at quarterback with explosive playmakers like Jeremiah Love, but replacing Riley Leonard and defensive stars poses challenges. A favorable schedule supports another CFP run.
Okay,
College
let
football. Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Let me stop Grok right here.
Yeah.
Riley Leonard, are you serious? It says replacing Riley Leonard poses challenges. Bro was not that great of a quarterback. What is Grok talking about? I don't know. I mean, Riley Leonard was worse. I mean, he basically didn't do anything to lose the game, but he didn't do anything to win the game. Riley Leonard reminds me a lot of, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna say something kind of. It might be a hot take, right? I think Riley Leonard was worse than J.J. Watt,
Really?
and I think J.J. Watt. No, not J.J. McCarthy. What am I talking about? My bad. I just
That took me a second too. I'm like, wait, that's defense.
I think JJ McCarthy is better than Riley Leonard, and JJ McCarthy, to me, wasn't that great of a quarterback. He just wasn't. Um, they had very similar stats and stuff like that. Riley Leonard just didn't do it for me last year, and I'm not a hater. They beat my Georgia Bulldogs. Give credit to them, but they beat they beat us because they had an elite defense.
You know what else they did?
Hmm.
They also lost to Northern Illinois.
They did. I think Notre Dame is could be number 8 on this list, or I think they might be perfect at number 7. I don't know who else is on this list, but let's see what College Football HQ says. Love and Jadarian Price will have to hold down this offense while Riley Leonard's successor proves himself. Come on, bro. If you're worse than Riley Leonard, what are you doing? But anyways, but in the meantime, the Irish should once again play some of the nation's premier pass defense and a skilled secondary. Yes, I do agree with their defense is going to be elite once again. Now, I will say this. The Irish definitely has a great offensive line and defensive line, but they have a great offensive line, and Jeremiah Love is going to be the best running back in the country in 2025. That's not a hot take. That is not a prediction. It's a spoiler.
Yeah.
So I think Notre Dame could possibly be number 7 on this list. I would still move Oregon up, but we'll see. We'll see what we have on this list. Coming in at number 6, LSU. Now this is interesting, Ballard, because I was really high on LSU this past season, saying that they were going to go 11-1, make it to the SEC championship, and possibly win or lose. I think I said that they were going to lose, go 11-2, make it into the playoffs, and have a good run in the playoffs. I was totally wrong. So
Yeah.
everybody else is really high on LSU this year, Ballard. And I made a deal with myself. I said, I don't care if LSU wins the national championship next season. I don't care if everybody picks them to win. I will not pick them to win more than 10 games in 2025. I will not. I got burnt like a piece of toast in the toaster. I got burnt, Ballard, last year. I made myself look like a fool. But let's see what Grok said. Garrett Nussmeier leads a dynamic offense with top transfers like Nick Anderson. By the way, I have been extremely high on Nick Anderson, but last season he did have some injuries. I don't even know if he played that much this past season. I don't even think he played at all. Because I remember doing the Mayhem Anthony podcast, and every single week last year at Oklahoma, Nick Anderson, it always said injured, injured, injured. So I don't even know if he played that much this past season, but Nick Anderson is going to be one of the best wide receivers also in the conversation. Nick Anderson is a top 5 wide receiver coming into 2025. Yes, I said it. Barian Brown, he comes from Kentucky. He's also going to be a stud, making LSU a playoff contender. You know what, Ballard? I really want to say I agree with that, but I told myself I wouldn't do it. I told myself I wouldn't be drinking this LSU Kool-Aid because the past 2 years, Ballard, the past 2 years, I said that LSU was going to make the playoffs and possibly go to a SEC championship and stuff like that. The past 2 years, and I got crushed. Now,
You know what should have been the dead giveaway
what's that?
is the fact that they can't even win a season opener, and they gotta go to Clemson week 1.
And it's going to be tough. Brian Kelly's
Yeah, I mean
transfer.
that. Listen, if that's your draw for a possible playoff berth this year, like, good luck. Because you also got to play Alabama down the road. You got to play Florida. You got to play. I guess they play Oklahoma, or whoever. I don't know, man. But
Can I tell you something? Can I say something?
yeah,
I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but LSU's not scared of Alabama anymore.
no, I know.
I don't
But it's
think
still a big
that-
rivalry. It's still a big
it
rivalry.
is. It is a big rivalry. Yeah, it is. You're right. But I
We're not
think
scared of LSU anymore. There's not really any fear in that rivalry like there used to be. It's not as fierce.
I just think that LSU is going to be ready for Alabama. I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm not saying I haven't made any predictions yet. I'm not ready to make any predictions, but I just think that that's going to be a very close game. It's going to come down to the wire. That's all I'm going to say. But I do agree with what Grok said. Um, I do agree, even though I made a promise to myself that I would not have LSU as a playoff contender like I did the past 2 years, because Brian Kelly totally made me look like Boo Boo the Fool. But College Football HQ says the return of Nussmeier and several key skill threat bodes well for the offense, but the jury is still out on whether this LSU defense improves. Crucially, it does get Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks behind the line. Yes, Whit Weeks. That guy is a stud. I'm gonna tell you something
Yeah,
about Whit. I'm gonna tell you a little story about Whit Weeks that you probably didn't know, or maybe you did know. I don't know. But did you know the Weeks family were all Georgia fans?
really.
Yes, they were big Georgia fans growing up, and I don't know. I think Georgia didn't recruit him, and um and if they did, it was like really late in the recruitment cycle, and that's why they went to LSU instead of Georgia. I think Whit Weeks has a brother too, uh
Okay.
that plays for LSU as well, but I know both of them you know were big time Georgia fans growing up as children and stuff like that, and they went to LSU instead of Georgia, and I think it had something to do with the recruitment. I don't know if Georgia recruited them or not, but and if they did, it was really late into the cycle. They didn't. They felt like Georgia waited too long to start recruiting them or something like that. But I did hear a story about them and Whit Weeks. He really was an explosive player this past season. Harold Perkins as well. I think his Harold Perkins freshman season was a lot better than any year that he's played so far, but I think he's going to improve as well. I think this LSU defense does improve. I know College Football HQ says that the jury's still out whether it improves or not, but I am of the belief that it will improve. They, you know, they pretty much have a new coaching staff. Well, they have the same coaching staff that they had this past season, but this is going to be their second year defensively for that staff. Um, and what's his name again?
Which one?
Um, the defense coordinator for LSU's football team, Blake Baker.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was the linebackers coach for LSU in 2021. Comes back this past season as the defense coordinator after he was the defense coordinator at Missouri in 2022-2023. Remember how great their defenses was. Just remember that, right? So I think LSU at 6 I might have LSU at 7, and I think I would have Notre Dame at 8. I would probably bring Oregon back up to at least 6. Let's see who's number 5. Ohio State. Okay. Ohio State. I think Ohio State at 5. Let's see what Grock has to say about Ohio State first before I make my judgment on it. Losing key players and both coordinators hurt. That does hurt a lot, by the way. But stars like Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, plus a top recruiting class, keeping Ohio State elite. They need a new quarterback to maintain their Big Ten prowess. I do agree with everything that Grock said. That does hurt that you lose both coordinators, but we've seen this time and time again. Nick Saban loses a bunch of coordinators. Georgia, I mean, they lose coordinators too. Good thing for Georgia, they've been able to maintain their coordinators, you know, in recent memory, and they've been able to retain a lot of them, but they do lose coordinators, trust me. And then we've seen Clemson; they lose a lot of coordinators year in and out. These elite teams always lose coordinators, but it does hurt that you lost one coordinator to your rival in Penn State for the same exact position. Isn't that crazy?
Yep. Yeah, Jim
And
Knowles.
yeah, Jim Knowles. Now, I've been a fan of Jim Knowles ever since Oklahoma State days. I was a huge fan of him. I even have, you know, I did have some shorts talking about him, YouTube shorts talking about him and how, you know, I think he's one of the best in the game, and he's proven that time and time again, even back in the Oklahoma State days, and then going to Ohio State. Now he's going to Penn State, and he's going to be just as successful as he did at Ohio State. The question is, does Ohio State's defense go down a little bit? Because what was the biggest question before he came as defense coordinator? What was the biggest question mark about Ohio State?
Defense all over, really.
Right. So, yeah, they recruit. They have a top recruiting class. They have elite defensive guys, like they mentioned, Caleb Downs, right, being one of many of the top top defensive guys. But like you know, it's going to be something to see in the next couple of years what Ohio State looks like defensively. I'm gonna keep my eyes on that and see what they look like defensively. But yeah, I think Ohio State at 5. I don't know who's going to be on this list, but I think Ohio State at 5. I could possibly see them at like 4 or 3, but I like Ohio State at 5. College Football HQ says that's quite a lot of turnover for the national champions, but that's, I mean, come on, College Football HQ. I mean, that's exactly what is going to happen whenever you win a national championship. The turnover is going to be like that. But he says putting head coach Ryan Day under enormous pressure to prove he can coach what he has back off of a playoff run and not risk what could be marked as regression this season. I mean, if you don't win a national title, you kind of regress. Is that true? I mean, you just won a national championship. So anything other than the national championship, again, would be regressing. So I don't know if I agree with everything College Football HQ is saying, but I do agree everything with what Grock is saying. I do believe that Ryan Day is not an elite head coach. I know that's crazy to say because he just won a national championship, but Ryan Day has had the best college football team in the planet on college football for the past 4 years at least, and came away with one national championship. That is insane and crazy, in my opinion. I mean, he should at least have 2, if not 3. I mean, and losing to your rival 4 years in a row is also crazy. If you would have won, was it a couple years? If you would have won versus your rival in 2023, Michigan wouldn't even be the national champions. It probably would have been Ohio State. So just and then the missed field goal in 2022. And then 2024, they finally found win a national championship. So they had a bunch of miscues in the past. They finally got over the hump. They won a national championship, but I still don't believe in Ryan Day, even though he won a national championship. You know, but just like they say, the first championship costed a lot of money. The second championship is going to cost even more money. So let's see what Ryan Day can do. I don't think they go back to back. I don't believe that. I think they'll have a good season. Probably win 10 games or something like that. But they'll be in the conversation for the Big Ten title, probably. Like they are every year. But because there are only like 4 teams that could really make a big run in the Big Ten, even though they have like 18 teams, which is crazy to me. But anyways, what you think?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's going to be a good team. I mean, they're going to have production coming back on both sides, but it's very hard to do the same thing twice. It's hard to beat the same team twice in 1 year. It's hard to repeat. It's hard to whatever. I think the recruiting's great, as it mentions, and um, you know, I I I think the big thing for me for Ohio State is number one, they got to get over the Michigan hump. Number one, um, and number B, I I don't know, man. I feel like every year's a new team. They're gonna have to figure out their quarterback situation. Uh, After Will Howard left for the draft and everything, and yeah, they got the talent, they got the pieces, but now they got to find new leadership. I think to make it all work. So
Well, coming in at number 4, the best team in college football. No, I'm just
we don't
playing.
know.
The Georgia Bulldogs. Now I'm just playing. We did
Yeah.
win back to back. Seems like a long time ago, but we did win back to back just a few years ago. But man, time flies fast, don't it? It seems like just yesterday we were winning back to back. But anyways, um, at least we didn't win our last national title in like 2020 or something like that. But anyways, so coming in at number 4, you got the Georgia Bulldogs. Here's what Grok said. Despite a 2024 dip, Kirby Smart's recruiting and transfer like Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch fuel a rebound. A tough SEC schedule test their reloaded defense and Gunnar Stockton's new role at quarterback. I mean, I agree with, Grok said pretty much how do I explain this? A vanilla. They basically did a vanilla review of this Georgia team. It's very vanilla, very plain. Everybody knows Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch were the transfers coming in to the season. A tough SEC schedule. We already knew that because they're playing the same exact schedule that they did last year, except for all the away games are home games now, and all the home games that they had last year are away games. I mean, of course, it was tough last year. It's going to be tough this year. Reloaded defense. We already know Georgia's defense is going to be ready to rock and roll. Gunnar Stockton's new role at quarterback, we already know. We already had a little taste of Gunnar Stockton at the end of the season, this past season. Him playing at the second half of the SEC championship and him playing in the playoffs versus Notre Dame. Unfortunately, for Georgia, they lost, but I am still standing that Gunnar Stockton did not lose that game for Georgia. Gunnar Stockton did not lose that game for Georgia. They did not. It was a really bad offensive line play. Gunnar Stockton was running around with his head cut off, especially, I believe it was the left side of the offensive line. I can't remember his name right now, but I don't even want to remember his name because it was a nightmare. But yeah, just like Georgia's wide receivers also led the country last year, the whole entire country last year in drop passes. So I mean, Gunnar Stockton didn't lose that game, and remember in the SEC championship game, Texas was winning at halftime. So Gunnar Stockton led that team back, and they won in overtime, and it was off the back of Gunnar Stockton, and so I'm very high on Gunnar Stockton. I'm very optimistic about him. So I do, even though Grok said a whole bunch of nothing. Grok said a whole bunch of something without saying nothing is what I'm saying. Grok just said something very vanilla. Let's see what College Football HQ says. We have the Bulldogs at number 2 in our SEC football power rankings heading into the summer based on Smart's consistency recruiting the defensive side of the ball, but there are concerns whether Stockton can improve the defensive fortunes given how the unit regressed under Beck's leadership a year ago. I think this offense is going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be the best offense in the country or anything like that. I think it's going to be fine. There are Mike Bobo haters, but I think he's going to have this offense ready. I think Gunnar Stockton is going to be the man with the plan, and I've been very high on Gunnar Stockton ever since he was in high school. I've been following this guy since he was in high school, and I can't wait to see him come out and sling the ball everywhere. I think we're going. You know, I think we're going to be really good. 10-2, 11-1, something like that. Could be what Georgia is, and I think Georgia is slated for another playoff run. Um, you know, even with a new quarterback in Gunnar Stockton, we can definitely see Gunnar definitely improve from this past season, but he didn't really get a chance to um, do a whole lot this past season because he was the backup, and Carson Beck got injured in the SEC championship, so he kind of was stuck in there last second, and he did a really good job under pressure. So I do agree with what College Football HQ says, and even though Grok said a whole lot of nothing to me, it was kind of a vanilla paragraph there. I guess I agree with it too. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I like Georgia this year. There's a lot of teams I like really, but they should no doubt be back in the mix for an SEC title and right back in the 12-team playoff, regardless of whatever seed they get. They should be able to make a good run at it. And it wouldn't shock me if they do hold up the trophy at the end of the year, but I think it's going to come down to quarterback play with Gunnar Stockton. um, I don't know, man. I will give y'all credit, as to the past couple years or so. I know people have ripped on, well, they play an easy schedule in the SEC East. Well, now we don't have divisions. Um, you got to play Texas, Alabama, Georgia Tech at the end of the year at Auburn. I mean, that they got some challenges ahead of them this year, but I don't think it's too much they can't overcome. So I do like Georgia on this list here. I do like them to be one of the better teams, and I would definitely put them in the top five. Up next, number 3, Texas. Um, Grok says the Arch Manning era begins with a talented roster, but replacing 4 starting offensive linemen and key skill players could be a challenge, or could challenge their SEC dominance. Ryan Wingo and a strong defensive front led by Anthony Hill Jr. keep them in the title hunt. I think Texas, man, they gotta be one of my championship favorites. Hell, they might just be my championship favorite. What do you think, Mayhem?
So I didn't know that I was muted, but I wanted to say one more thing about the Georgia Bulldogs. I didn't know I was muted. I was talking. And I was like, "What in the world?" But yeah. So as far as you were talking about the Georgia schedule, they had the same exact schedule, except for the hard games that we had were all away games this past season. I think our schedule favors us a little bit more because we do play all the tough teams at home. But as far as Texas, Georgia's little brother, Texas, coming in at number 3, I do agree with what Brock said, 100%. But can I say something? I do not believe in Arch Manning. I don't. He's very he's a track star. Yeah, he's very fast, but is that always going to be able to? Can I say something crazy? He reminds me of what Alabama had this past season.
Yeah.
Now, look, Jalen Milroe, very fast. He can run all day, but as a quarterback, he to me just doesn't really scream elite, right?
I
Arch
agree.
Manning, Arch Manning is. I just don't really believe in Arch Manning. I just don't know what it is about Arch Manning. I understand the last name Manning. People want to believe, and he's had signs of him being good and whatnot, but I just, I don't know, man. Arch, Arch Manning. I mean, a couple years ago, Georgia really wanted him, and like, I mean, at the time, I really wanted him too. But he's really fast, but can he can he be accurate with the ball? Can he throw the ball? I mean, I don't know, man. I think Texas's defense is really going to be Texas's strong suit this upcoming season. I think Arch Manning does struggle a little bit early on in the season, and then gets better as the season goes.
I agree.
College Football HQ says it's officially Arch Madness, and Austin, as the latest branch of this quarterback tree, finally gets his time in the sun. And while he needs to get solid protection to realize his potential, he should have some elite targets and a strong defense to lean on. Yes, exactly. Strong defense. That last part, he should have some elite targets and strong defense to lean on. That is the truest statement. That's exactly what I said, summed up in a nutshell. I think he probably struggles on early on in the season, but as time goes on, he could get better. I can see him getting better, and I could see definitely Texas making another playoff run. And if Arch Manning is built up to what he is supposed to be, then I could see them possibly win a national championship. But the big question mark I have for Texas this coming season in 2025 is Arch Manning. The rest, I don't really have any questions about the rest. Let's move on to number 2. Clemson. Grock says K Club next growth and stout defense under new coordinator Tom Allen position Clemson as ACC favorites. Their transfer additions like edge rusher Jeremiah Alexander, really good addition by the way, and will help add depth. Though running back remains a concern. I'm gonna be really quick with this. Everything I said about Alabama, I'm gonna say about Clemson, but the only difference is Clemson plays in the All Cupcake Conference, so they should be able to perform a little bit better than Alabama because Alabama does have a really a hard schedule. They play in the SEC. So College Football HQ says we'll never know how Klubnik responds to his career year without a proven rushing option to balance this offense out. But the Tigers are big favorites in the ACC, thanks mostly to a great defense rotation that should once again among college football's most consistently aggressive up and around the line. So I agree with everything that Grok and College Football HQ says. Everything I said about Alabama, I'm going to say about Clemson. They've struggled with offensive line. Running back remains a concern. So kind of the same thing I talked about with Alabama, I'm going to say about Clemson. K. Klubnik, we already know he's a great quarterback. He's going to be one of the best, probably top 5, top 10 quarterbacks in the country this coming season. So, they got some great coordinators. They got a great coaching staff. Dabo Swinney's among the best head coaches in the country as well. So Clemson should be just fine.
Yeah, I agree. I like Clemson this year. I think they're always going to have a good defense. Guys come back on defense. You bring in Jeremiah Alexander from Alabama. You bring back Peter Woods on the defensive side. Uh, they're going to have the talent. I think it starts up front on offense with Gay Klubnik. Um, Trying to think who else. Phil Maffa, I believe, is still out there, but um, overall, I think that Clemson should be one of the better teams out there. And this, you know, I had talked about it on the show this morning. I said, is this one of those years? Um, it's like, is this a year for Clemson to win a title? Like, do they have to? I got to get your thoughts on that, Mayhem, real quick before we get to Penn State, who's number one. Do you think now? Obviously, Dabo's not on a hot seat or anything, and I mentioned that. But is the window closing on Clemson to win a title? Like, do you think it has to be a year like this year, or else they're probably not going to get one for quite some time?
I don't think that the window is closing. Um, I think that Clemson is still in contention to even win a national title this year because I think this year it's more wide open. Last year, I think everybody knew Ohio State was probably going to win the national championship. I mean, wasn't that kind of like a given? I mean, I don't know. I had them as a favorite to win the national championship, and I think a lot of other people did too. I mean, it was just destined for Ohio State to win the national championship. This year, we have a couple of teams that could possibly do it. Ohio State can always repeat. We can have Clemson, we can have Oregon, we can have Texas, we can have
Bama, Penn State. Those
Bama,
are
Penn
the
State,
things.
even a Georgia, LSU.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of teams that, in my opinion, have just as much talent and just as much you know percentage to win the national championship as Clemson does, and the coaching staff at Clemson is elite, and I do believe that uh, that they're going to be just fine. They made the playoffs whenever it was against all odds for them this past season. They weren't successful, but they took Texas all the way down to the wire. If you don't remember that,
Yeah.
actually, Ballard, you should remember that because me and you met each other that day and went out to eat and watched that game at
Yeah.
at the restaurant. So, that game was all the way down to the wire, all the way down to the final minute of the game. Clemson could have easily won that playoff game, easily, but they did come up a little bit short. But just as we seen last year with Texas's best team in a long time, um, Clemson team that a lot of people gave up on, took them down to the wire. So, yes, I do think Clemson could win a national championship just as easy as a team like Texas, Oregon, um, you know, Penn State, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, right? I mean, yes, I do think that um, Clemson can win it this year, and if they don't win it this year, I don't think that it's 100% that they're just going to fall off. I think they're going, as long as they're in the ACC, they can be in contention year in and year out. Because let's just face it, Ballard. You got Clemson, Miami, and whenever Florida State wants to get their crap together, I guess Florida State. And then who else? I mean, Georgia Tech, I guess. Huh?
SMU. You talking about the contenders of the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, there's only like, what, 3 or 4 of them?
Yeah, I mean, I would throw Clemson, Miami. You mentioned Florida State if they get it together, SMU, Georgia Tech, and then that's about it.
Yeah.
Like,
So I mean, and whenever you look at them teams that we just named, Florida State doesn't scare Clemson at all. Miami always seems to lose games that they should win. It's weird how that works. They were supposed to win the ACC this past season, didn't happen. So Miami's kind of one of them teams like what are you doing type teams. Also, Florida State is horrible. You know, Mike Norvell has had only one winning season since he's been the head coach. I think all the rest of them has been losing seasons. So we'll see what happens there with Florida State. But yeah, in the ACC, Clemson should win, no problem, and be right back into the playoffs year in and year out. But with the landscape of college football changing like it does, I mean, only time will tell. But let's go on to number one because we got to get a move on. Go ahead.
yep. Penn State comes in at number one here. I mean, I think it's obvious in terms of that's the only team left that we haven't really talked about, but Penn State with Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, everyone's coming back, man. I mean, they lost Tyler Warren, and I mean, maybe a defensive player or two, but no one of like big name other than Abdul Carter. Like they return probably the most production in the Big Ten this next season. I would at least assume that. Let's see what it says though. Grok says Drew Aller and a veteran offense with running backs Nick Singleton and Katron Allen return, but the team must overcome James Franklin's history of struggling against elite opponents. A strong transfer class, including receivers Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross, bolsters their CFP aspirations. I agree. Um, I think like they got to get over the Ohio State hump. They got to find ways to beat teams like that. They were unable to do that last year. Now it played out because Ohio State lost to Michigan and having an Oregon loss. Uh, it panned out that they were able to back their way into a Big Ten title. But they did lose to Oregon. And it just, I don't know, is it me or does it seem like James Franklin can never get it done in a big game?
Well, I'm gonna just be really quick on this because I didn't think we were going to spend this long talking about this article, but I'll go ahead and say this. Everything I said about LSU, I'm gonna say about Penn State. Literally, Penn State is the LSU of the Big Ten. literally. You know, whenever you think that they're going to win the Big Ten, finally get over the hump, they disappoint you again. They find a way to disappoint again. They were in the Big Ten championship this year, and they actually held their own against the number one team in the country in Oregon. Oregon almost fumbled that game away. It was a very high score, and I think it was like 45-37 or something like that. So I think it was like a one-score game. If they could have got in for a touchdown or something, maybe we would be talking about Penn State winning the Big Ten and making the playoffs. But I mean, Penn State went to the playoffs regardless, and they had a decent run, making it to was it the Final Four?
Yeah.
So I mean, they did pretty good. You know, they had an easier path to the national championship with playing teams like SMU, Notre Dame, and was that I want to say there was another team they played, but maybe not. But yeah, I mean, I think they had it. Well, Boise State. My bad. Sorry, I knew there was
Yeah.
another team. So they played Boise State, SMU. Two. They're not easy wins because they did make it to playoffs, but easier wins than what others had to face, right? Like Tennessee had to play Ohio State, Oregon had to play Ohio State, right? And
Yeah.
like that whole side of the bracket was much harder and much more difficult than what Penn State had to play. Boise State, SMU, they played. SMU was a Group of 5 team the year before, so I mean, and then they played another Group of 5 team in Boise State. So kind of like two. I know SMU's not a Group of 5 team. I understand that, but kind of like two Group of 5 teams that they played, and then they finally played Notre Dame. You know, whenever they finally played somewhat good competition, they lost, right? But yeah, they made the Final Four. You know, had an easier path than the rest of the squad did. But yeah, they need to prove it to me, man. They need to prove that they can do it, and that starts with winning the Big Ten, I believe, in my opinion. And everything I said about LSU, I'm going to say about Penn State. That's exactly how I feel.
I agree. I need to. It's like that team that you got to see them win a big game before you pick them in a big game, you know?
Yeah. But speaking of Penn State, former Penn State wide receiver Julian Fleming seriously injured in a deadly ATV accident. This is coming from 247 Sports. Former Penn State receiver Julian Fleming was involved in a deadly ATV accident Friday evening, according to a report from Pennsylvania State Police. The report said the accident resulted in the death of a woman, and that Fleming was hospitalized with a suspected serious injury. The accident happened at 8:13 p.m. Friday in Columbia Township in Bradford County. Fleming was said to be driving the 2024 Yamaha ATV, and his passenger, 23-year-old Alyssa Boyd, sustained fatal injuries. According to Penn State sources, Boyd was Fleming's girlfriend. The report said neither was wearing a helmet. From the report, this crash occurred on Painter Lick Lane in Columbia Township. An ATV was traveling northbound on Painter Lick Lane when it collided with a deer that had jumped out in the roadway. Neither of the occupants were wearing safety equipment. The operator of the ATV sustained serious injuries and was transferred to the hospital. The passenger sustained extensive injuries from the crash and was pronounced deceased at the scene. A recently deceased deer was located on the scene, consistent with damage observed on the ATV, assisted by on scene by EMS. and the fire department and state police and their specialists. This crash is under further investigation at the time. And it goes on to say about Fleming's career. We already know about that, but he has been released from the hospital, and this is a developing story. So, just prayers for everybody, and I just prayers for everybody that was involved, and prayers to the family of the woman who passed away um, in this accident. So, you know,
Yeah.
prayers up for the families and for the people involved in the accidents.
Yeah, our thoughts and prayers go up to the good Lord above, and you know, just praying for the families, man. I mean, this is a tough situation, and um, you know, you're talking about a college kid, and uh, yeah, I mean, you never want to see anything like this happen, especially to a college football player or someone in like college age, in their youth and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I don't really have much thoughts other than, I mean, I'm glad he's alive. You know, I'm glad he's hopefully going to get a recovery, but for Alyssa Boyd, who did pass, who was the passenger, um, 23 years old. Just pray for the Boyd family, I guess.
For sure. It's never easy to talk about stuff like this. So all we can do is read the report and pray for those that were involved. And it's never easy to talk about stuff like this. So prayers up to them. Let's also move on. It's always hard to also move on from conversations like this, but got to get a move on here. ACC news. ACC distributed record $45 million per school in 2023-2024 season. I'm not going to read all of this. I am going to read some of the highlights, though. The ACC generated $711 million for the 2023-2024 academic year, according to a new tax document released by the league, distributing an average of $45 million to each of its 14 full-time members schools, a record for the conference. The financial reports, which cover the final year of ACC athletics prior to the additions of SMU, Stanford, and Cal, show a small uptick in revenue year over year, and roughly 56% increase from 5 years ago. That's also really good. Though the revenue distribution puts the ACC solidly in third place among conferences, it still trails the SEC and Big Ten by a sizable margin. Those relative deficits has remained a source of concern. I can't even pronounce that for members, and resulted in lawsuits filed by Florida State in 2023 and Clemson in February of 2024 to challenge the ACC grant rights, which binds the league together through June 2036. The framework of settlement of those lawsuits was reached earlier this year. However, as the conference conceded to a new revenue distribution model that would prioritize the biggest brands. So basically, Miami teams like Miami, Clemson, Florida State would get more money, is basically what that says. Commissioner Jim Phillips said at this week's spring meetings, which we'll talk about the SEC's up next, but this is the ACC's spring meetings, that he believed the agreement would provide stability for the ACC for at least 3 to 4 more years. I think he said, I quote, I think you've got to settle down, end quote, Phillips said. Quote, I think college athletics needs to settle down, not just the ACC. I think we position ourselves for that. The chaos and constant wondering of what's happening here or there that distracts from the business at hand. I feel good about where we're at. And while I do take things on one day at a time, I think there's a period of time where let's settle in and get things done, end quote. So, after Florida State pushed for changes to the revenue distribution model in 2023, the league adopted a set of success initiatives that would offer a higher payout of postseason revenue to schools that won the postseason in football and men's and women's basketball. Those success initiatives were not implemented at the time, covered by the latest Form 990 reports. However, sources at several programs said that they expect those success initiative combined with the new brand payouts would help bring top programs in the ACC closer in line with revenue generated by SEC and Big Ten schools. In its last filing, the Big Ten showed $880 million in revenue for that year, but those numbers will be significantly higher in filings that reflect the massive new TV deal for the conference. The SEC distributed $808 million, which is averaging about $53 million per school. So I said all that to say this. The ACC is still keeping hope alive. It seems like according to the article, every single year they generate more and more money for these schools, and getting them a little bit closer to the SEC and the Big Ten. They'll never be able to. They will never be able to top the SEC and the Big Ten. So them being in third place is wonderful, in my opinion. And I think the landscape of college football in the next 10 to 15 years is going to turn into a 2-league college football, and they're going to adopt more of like a NFL style game, and I think it's going to be NFL Junior. That's what I think is going to happen in the future. But ACC being in third place is good news for the ACC. They and every single year they generate more money for their programs, getting them 1 inch closer and closer to the big 2 leagues, which is the Big Ten and SEC. So, everybody wants to say the ACC is done. These teams are getting out of the ACC yesterday and all this garbage. Like Clemson and Florida State, all these teams, they're not getting out. At the earliest I could see them getting out is after 2030. Like, they're not getting out next year. They're not getting out in 2027. They're not getting out in 2028. They're most likely, unless there's a loophole that somebody can find and bust loose to get out of it. I mean, remember, the grant of rights was a 3-page document, and it really don't have a whole lot of loopholes in it. So, I think that contract is pretty set in stone. So you can look at Clemson and Florida State and Miami and all them teams being in the ACC for the foreseeable future. And just if you're a fan of the ACC, just be glad that they're able to generate more money for these schools year after year after year, and you know, and that they're doing better, and that they were able to um, construct the new plan that gives more money for those who have postseason success, like an SMU, right? They
Right.
were able to get more money for their school, um, because of the success they had in the postseason. So um, that's all good news coming from the ACC.
I agree.
You got anything to say about it?
No, other than, I mean, it's obvious, I think, with these newer teams and everything, I think that, um, it doesn't surprise me that they set this type of record. It doesn't, um, like, you bring in these new teams like SMU, who else they bring in? Cal, Stanford. Um, anyway, you bring all these teams in, and I think we kind of expected this for these conferences. I don't know what we expected specifically for the ACC, but doesn't it feel like it just blew up in a good way? Like it just like because you got Cal and Stanford, because you got like you already have good brands in there, such as Miami, North Carolina, Clemson. You already got them. Then you go get some California schools, you bring them over from the West Coast that are good in their own way, and ultimately, um, I mean, everyone's making money.
Yeah. Um, I believe. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, I mean, Georgia Tech had to be like the most watched. Let's see. And like in this past season, Georgia
Mhm.
Tech was the ACC's most watched team in 2024 with an average of 3.1 million viewers. So also you got to include teams like Georgia Tech as well that are doing good for the ACC as well. Um,
Yeah.
so ACC is doing good. They're not close to dying or anything like that. I do expect fully in the next 10 to 15 years to have a two league um, uh, SEC and Big Ten, a two league college football. But as of right now, I mean, the uh, the ACC is keeping hope alive, and so with that being said, let's move on to what to expect at SEC spring meetings in Destin, literally tomorrow. So let's talk about the first um, topic, which is we only have three topics, which we're going to really skip part of one. So um, waiting on the settlement. So all the work has been done for the House versus NCAA settlement. The NCAA and their attorneys have restructured their roster limits rules by setting up a grandfather system for players currently in school. Now all that is left is for this to be passed, so revenue sharing with college athletes can be officially begin on July 1st during SEC spring meetings, which is literally tomorrow through the 29th. This settlement will be discussed, whether it passes this week or not. Schools will be allowed to spend $20.5 million, but we still aren't sure if the league will have a blanket plan across the conference or if it'll be individual schools will get to determine how much each sport gets. There will also be the Title IX questions that come along with that. Greg Sankey and his commissioner will eventually have to address. This is the number one topic in college athletics because of the payments and everything that comes with it. Once the settlement is passed, the College Sports Commission will be formed, and a CEO will be named. That person will make a 7-figure salary. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my application in, and will quickly become a face in the college sports space as CSC will handle punishments and oversee NIL clearinghouse that will determine if deals have fair market value or not. So we have not heard Sankey open up on this commission. Maybe that comes this week. So, I mean, this is huge because I know the last thing that we heard about House versus NCAA is that they weren't going to pass it unless they restructured their roster limit. That was the last thing that we had heard, and
Yeah.
and I think it. Let me see. I don't know what the roster limit was. I was seeing if I could look it up. Oh, right here. The plan calls for replacing scholarship limits 85 for football and 9.9 for men's wrestling, for example, with roster limits 105 for football, 30 for wrestling. So we don't care about wrestling, but so instead of 85 scholarship limits, they will have 105 scholarship roster limit. A school can offer scholarships to every player on the team, but that will cost money, and most predict that walk-ons or partial scholarship athletes will be left out. So basically, the walk-ons is like dead in college football. There won't
Yeah.
there won't be no such thing as walk-ons in college football whenever this passes, because they did restructure their roster limit, and once this passes, it'll begin on July 1st. They'll have some other questions that will have to get answered, but yeah, man, I think this is good for college football. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good for college football too. It's good for the ACC. Um, I yeah, or the SEC, I should say. But
Yeah. So let's talk about the playoff expansion. We already talked about this team. We already talked about this the last time with the straight seeding instead of the 4 highest ranked conference champions receiving byes. We already know about that. We're going to skip that. Um, all signs point to the college football playoff expanding to 16 teams. We already know that. That could include playing games the week after the conference championship on the same December Saturday as the Army Navy game. There are numerous thoughts about this structure, whereas SEC and Big Ten could get each 4 automatic bids. Playing games going head to head with NFL and a season that could last until February. There's much to phrase go through. Expect Greg Sankey to be asked about this. So we talked about the straight seeding. I want to talk about this, that the college football playoff possibly expanding to 16 teams that could include playing games. So that would give the SEC and Big Ten 4 automatic bids. What's your thoughts?
I mean, you said, hold on, for the SEC to get 4 automatic bids
And the Big Ten.
and the Big Ten.
Yeah. In this, all signs are pointing to college football playoff expanding to 16 teams.
Well, that's too many for expansion. That's, I mean, and you know, the reality is that's where we're heading. Is a power grab for the playoffs between the SEC and the Big Ten. That's where we're heading. Now, suck it up and cry. I don't know. That's where we're going. I hate it too, but honestly, man, like, you know, as someone that grew up on the SEC and everything, I also kind of like it.
Yeah. So this is how the playoff would work. Under the 16 team proposal, 8 auto bids from the Big Ten and SEC exist, 4 from each league, along with 2 ACC qualifiers, 2 Big 12 qualifiers, 1 Group of 5, and 3 at-large teams. So that's exactly how it would work, Ballard. This 16-team playoff would have 4 Big Ten automatic bids, 4 SEC automatic bids, the ACC only gets 2 automatic bids. The Big 12 only gets 2 automatic bids, 1 Group of 5, and 3 at-large teams. I need your thoughts on that.
So basically, you said it's 4 for the Big Ten and 4 for the SEC in a 16-team playoff.
Yep, and then 2 from the ACC,
Okay.
2 from the Big 12, 1 Group of 5, and 3 at-large teams.
Well, can we be honest about something?
What's that?
With the auto bids, the Big Ten and the SEC combined for half of that playoff field.
Yep.
But then go down to those at large bids. I mean, come on, man. They're gonna put in the Big Ten and the SEC again, aren't they? I mean,
Duh. I
you
mean,
think
wouldn't you think?
most likely, like they're gonna find the at large and just keep putting them in. I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, we could possibly see 5 or 6 SEC teams or 5 or 6 Big Ten teams in the 16-team playoff, which is almost half of the playoff field.
yeah.
So, I mean, what's your thoughts, man? I want to know. Do you think it's crazy? Do you think it's right? Do you think it's not right? I mean,
Honestly, I think it's the craziest thing ever, but I mean, I also am willing to accept that that's where we're heading with this sport. I think it's stupid. I think it's ridiculous. You know, I might be an SEC fan. I might like Big Ten teams. I might like SEC teams. But I'm also a man that, like, it is of equality within a sport, you know, and the way we're heading is going to throw the ACC out the window, the Big 12 out the window, maybe throw out the independents of the group of 5. I, dude, like, it's just not fair.
yeah, I think what I said earlier, I mean, with this coming up and these auto bids and the SEC and Big Ten hogging everything, and with the money that the SEC and Big Ten generates, it's just I think they're going to swallow up college football. I think we talked a couple weeks back about the 40 team college football that we could possibly be seeing. 20 teams from the Big Ten, 20 teams from the SEC, and that would be college football as we know it. The rest of them there would be 40 teams that have a chance to win the national championship, and outside of that, if you are not part of them 40 teams, you're never going to win the national championship. It's you play for your bowl game and keep it moving, right? But I think that's where we're headed. I know they have to do it like this at first, but the writing is on the wall. In the next 10 or 15 years, the SEC and Big Ten is going to be the only two conferences that make up college football. Yeah, there will be other conferences, but they won't be playing for a national championship every year. It'll be the SEC and Big Ten. But right now, they are talking about a possible 16-team playoff that, I'll say it one more time, 4 from the SEC auto bids, 4 from the Big Ten auto bids, 2 from the ACC, 2 from the Big 12, 1 from the Group 5, and 3 at-large teams, which I agree with Ballard, which are going to be divided with Big Ten and SEC. So that tells me right there that they don't care about the ACC, they don't care about the Big 12, they don't care about the Group 5, they don't care about the rest of college football. They're caring about what they're caring about themselves and what's best for the Big Ten and SEC. And don't be surprised if you see Big Ten and SEC kind of swallow college football in the next 10 years or so. Speaking of the SEC, they begin spring meetings begin tomorrow. As I said, they also are going to be talking about the exploration of a 9-game conference schedule. I want to get your thoughts on this.
I don't like it.
And also,
That's my thoughts. I really don't like it.
It says the only way the SEC would agree to add a 9th conference game would be additional inclusion in future playoff brackets, along with the expectation of bigger payday from its TV partner. Just to add that, but you can continue.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, the non-conference games are pretty fun, though, aren't they? I mean, in ways. Like, when you schedule home and homes, like what Alabama's doing, I mean, we got Florida State, we have Wisconsin this year for Alabama, talking them up, and then ULM and East Illinois. Now, those two teams, I mean, I could understand one group of 5 team, but like Florida State, say whatever you want to about them last year. Wisconsin, say whatever you want about that. Those games on TV can bring in a lot of money. And if you go to 9 games instead of 8 in conference, you're taking away the opportunity to play another big time school outside of your league. And I've never been a big fan of that.
Right. Speaking of not being a fan of things, I am 100% not a fan of this. Did you know that there is also discussion about the Big Ten and SEC doing away with conference championships? Do you know what they're gonna? Do you know what they're gonna replace them with, Ballard?
Playoffs.
They're going to replace them in a play-in games. So basically, how it reads is the Big Ten and SEC holding play-in games during conference championship weekend every year to determine other auto bids. Essentially, the two teams who appear in the league title game would be the two of the auto bids with the conference's number 3 and number 6 team, deciding another along with number 4 versus number 5 matchup. So the winner of number 3 and number 6 will get an automatic bid into the playoff, and then whoever wins number 4 versus number 5 would get an automatic bid into the playoffs. And then whoever's number 1 in the SEC at the end of the year, I guess based off of conference record, would be automatic bid into the playoff as well. And then, so yeah, man, that would be your quote unquote SEC champion, I guess. If you're number 1 at the end of the year, they won't really have an SEC championship game. They'll get away with that. The Big Ten and SEC are also in favor of the idea of having a double bye for the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the bracket in the proposed 16-team bracket. The first round would consist of 2 games, the 16 seed against the 13 seed and the 15 seed against the 14 seed. The winners of those games would move on to the second round, where 15-14 victor would play the number 4 seed on its home field, and the 16-13 winner would face off with the number 3 seed on the road. There would be 6 second round games overall, with 10-7, 11-6, 9-8, 12-5, rounding out the slate. Man, I just don't like any of that. I need to get your thoughts.
I want to vomit hearing all that. I'm
Good
not even
grief.
kidding you, man. Like, this is just stupid. Oh, I mean, no.
Yeah, I just former Alabama Alabama coach Nick Saban is in favor of playoff expansion, endorsing the idea of 14 or 16 team field in 2026 and beyond. He said, and I quote, "Back in the years, I was never for expanding the playoffs because I thought bowl games were really important to the history and tradition of college football. But now that we have expanded the playoff, now the bowl games have taken a less significant role. So I think expanding the playoffs and having as many teams involved as we can without playing too many games for the players, I think that's a little bit of the concern, is probably a good thing." Now, the last question I'm going to ask you about this, and then we'll end the show here, unless you have something else to talk about.
No.
The last question I have to ask to end the show here is, if we expand to a 16-team playoff, does that help bowl season? I mean, obviously it would, right?
Does it help bowl
I mean,
season?
yeah, because,
I mean,
like in a 4-team playoff, when we had the 4-team playoff, bowl games, I guess people said bowl games didn't matter, right? If you wasn't in the top 4, it was a meaningless bowl game. That's what they said, quote unquote, meaningless bowl game. Okay, now we're at a 12-team playoff, and if you didn't make the top 12, there was exciting bowl games like South Carolina, Illinois, like Alabama, Michigan. There were some exciting ones, don't get me wrong. But, it felt like one team really wanted to win and one team just really didn't want to. I mean, I think the most exciting bowl game this past season was the South Carolina, Illinois game, because they both really wanted to win. And, give credit to both of them head coaches and that staff and that teams that really got up for them games, even though that South Carolina and maybe Illinois felt like that they deserved to be the last spot in the college football playoff. I'm not sure, but a lot of people are saying, that bowl games really don't matter now since it's a 12-team playoff. But the more bowl games that you get in these playoffs, so like whenever we expand to the inevitable 16-team playoff, we'll get more bowl games in these playoffs, right? And these games will then, the postseason is what I'm trying to say. The postseason will mean a lot more, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the bowl games. Like we keep expanding and we keep tying in bowls with these playoff games. I mean, is there ever again gonna be people that say, "Well, it's just a meaningless bowl game"? Not if there's 16-team playoffs and you need to go somewhere to play a football game outside of your home stadium.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what I take away from that in a positive.
I'm in favor for a 16-team playoff. I'm not in favor that the Big Ten and SEC get most likely more than half of the playing field to work with. I think it should be equal across the board. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you would get it to be equal. I mean, but I understand it's really all about money and, you know, what product they're going to put on TV and TV deals and stuff like that. That's really the main thing here whenever they're making their decisions, is what's best for their wallets and
Right.
what's best. And they're not really looking at what's best for college football and the fans itself, because they know, Ballard, that every single year, regardless of what they do, me and you are going to watch. They know that. They know idiots like me and you are going to watch college football. It doesn't matter if they go to a 500 team playoff. Like, we're going to be watching it, right? We're going to be here for the chaos, is what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. That honestly, we would have to do a completely different show, because we kind of ran through that really quickly because it is getting late here. But honestly, I think for the next show, I think we can pause it right here. I think we can pause this conversation right here in the show and then pick up on the next edition of Touchdowns Live and start the show with this, talking about this, and actually dive into this, because there is a lot to unpack that we haven't even unpacked with this story, this developing story. And we'll get a lot more information as this week goes by with the SEC spring meetings starting tomorrow through the next couple of days. So the next Touchdowns Live is going to be a banger. So if you like this edition of it, please smash the thumbs up. And if you really like this content, leave Ballard a subscription. It is completely free. Like Ballard don't charge you to hit the subscribe button. Come on, bro. Like, if you can't hit the subscribe button, what are you doing? It's really
Your
easy.
hands don't work.
I mean, like, it's kind of like opening the door for somebody at Walmart or whatever store, right? You just open up the door for them, you know, say hello. It's just something. If you like the content, you can hit the like button, and if you want to see more of Ballard, or if you just want to be friendly and hit the subscribe button, let's get him to 2,000 subscribers. I mean, he's worked really hard for this. He puts a lot of time and effort into his YouTube channel, and he should get a lot of respect for that. So hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, absolutely. Love y'all. God bless. Mayhem. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Good odds.
Hold tight.